You know, people often think the big fights in this bar start over the big things. Money owed, a stolen glance at someone else's girl, maybe an old blood feud. And sure, those happen. But more often than not, the things that really make a person unravel, they're small, trivial even. It's the little disrespects, the tiny cuts that accumulate over years, until one day, something utterly ridiculous becomes the breaking point. It's never about the thing itself. It's about what the thing represents. And sometimes what it represents is the realization that the people you call family don't actually see you at all. It was a Tuesday, slow night. The rain was coming down hard outside, rattling against the glass. The kind of night that makes you feel the damp in your bones. A guy slid onto the stool right in the middle of the bar. Looked to be in his late 40s. He had the posture of a man carrying the weight of the world. That slightly slumped look you get when you've been the responsible one for too long. He loosened his tie like it was choking him and ordered a scotch, double. Didn't specify the brand, which tells me he wasn't here for the taste. He was here for the effect. I poured him a glass of the well scotch and slid it over. He stared at it for a long moment, swirling the ice until it started to melt. He looked exhausted. Not just tired from a long day, but soul tired. Finally, he took a long swallow and let out a ragged breath. "Ever had a piece of cake blow up your entire life, Mac?" he asked, not looking at me, but at his own reflection in the bar mirror. "I've heard some strange openers in my time, but that one got my attention." I wiped down the counter, giving him space. "Can't say I have," I replied, keeping my tone light. "But I'm guessing you're about to tell me how it's done." He gave a short, bitter laugh. Yeah, I guess I am." He introduced himself as Alan, and the story he laid out wasn't about a cake. It was about a collision between careful planning and careless disregard. It was his son's birthday. Leo turned 8 years old. And here's the thing about Leo. He's a great kid. Bright, funny, obsessed with dinosaurs. But he's also severely allergic. We're not talking a little rash. We're talking EpiPens, emergency room visits, the constant grinding fear that a single mistake could be fatal. Gluten, dairy, eggs, tree nuts, the whole 9 yards. For Alan and his wife Sarah, navigating life was a military operation. Reading every label, wiping down every surface, never letting their guard down. Parties were the worst. You can't control what other people bring. So they hosted Leo's party at their house. They provided all the food. And Sarah, Alan said, she's a saint. She spent 2 days baking a special cake for Leo, a chocolate avocado mousse cake. Apparently, it's the only dessert that tastes like the real thing without trying to kill him. It wasn't cheap, and it wasn't easy, but seeing Leo's face light up when he could actually eat his own birthday cake, that was worth everything. This cake wasn't just dessert. It was normalcy. It was inclusion. It was love, baked into a 9-inch round pan. The party was winding down. The kids were crashing from the sugar-free juice boxes. The parents were making small talk. The cake had been a hit. There was one slice left, just one. And Alan had specifically set it aside on a separate plate covered in plastic wrap right at the back of the counter. He'd told Leo he could have it for breakfast the next morning, a little extra birthday treat. Leo was thrilled. And then Alan's brother-in-law, Brian, walked into the kitchen. Brian, Alan explained, is one of those guys who moves through the world like a bull in a china shop. Loud, opinionated, and utterly convinced of his own importance. He's the type who thinks allergies are just picky eating, something you can power through. He's made jokes about it for years. What's Leo gonna do in the real world? Live in a bubble? That kind of thing. Alan was in the living room, helping another parent find their kid's missing shoe, when he saw Brian wander out of the kitchen, licking chocolate mousse off a fork. Alan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He walked into the kitchen. The separate plate was still there, still covered in plastic wrap. But it was empty. Brian hadn't just taken a slice of cake. He had specifically unwrapped the slice that had been set aside, eaten it, and then re-wrapped the empty plate. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. Alan stood there, staring at the empty plate, feeling the anger rise up in his chest. It wasn't just the cake. It was the presumption. It was the dismissal. It was the casual violation of the one boundary they had. He found Brian holding court in the driveway, laughing loudly at his own joke. Alan walked up to him, trying to keep his voice steady, but he said he could feel his hands shaking. Tight with controlled anger. "Brian, the slice of cake on the counter, the one that was wrapped up, did you eat it?" Brian didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. He grinned, that big, careless grin of his. "Yeah, I did. What's the big deal? It was just sitting there, and man, that was good. Weird texture, but good. What you put in it, avocado?" Alan felt something snap. Angry again. That was Leo's. It was the only piece left of the only cake he can eat. I set it aside for him. You know how hard it is for him, Brian. You know what we go through. Brian's smile faded, replaced by a look of annoyance. He crossed his arms, puffing out his chest. The other parents nearby stopped talking, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "Oh, come on, Alan, don't be so dramatic. It's a piece of cake. Buy him another one." "I can't just buy him another one," Alan shot back, his voice rising. "Sarah spent 2 days making that. It's specialized ingredients. But that's not the point. The point is, you saw something that was clearly set aside and you took it, without asking, without thinking about anyone but yourself." Brian scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're getting bent out of shape over dessert. This is what I'm talking about. You're so uptight about everything. Maybe if you loosened up, Leo wouldn't be so sensitive." That was the knife twist. The implication that Leo's life-threatening allergies were somehow Alan's fault, that his vigilance was weakness. In front of their friends, their neighbors, their family. Alan said he saw red. He didn't shout. He didn't swear. He just looked Brian in the eye and said, with a voice that was cold and dead calm, "Get out of my house now, and don't come back until you understand what respect means." The silence that followed was absolute. Brian looked stunned, like he couldn't believe Alan was actually standing up to him. He opened his mouth to argue, but Alan just pointed towards the street. "Go." Brian mumbled something under his breath, grabbed his wife, Alan's sister, and stormed off. The aftermath was brutal. Alan's sister called him an hour later, hysterical. tearful, accusatory, and frantic. "How could you do that to Brian? You humiliated him in front of everyone. He's your family. It was just a mistake." Alan tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She accused him of being controlling, of using Leo's allergies to isolate them, of harboring resentment towards Brian because he was more successful. It was a barrage of accusations that had clearly been festering for years, all unleashed by a slice of chocolate avocado cake. The family divided instantly. His parents sided with his sister, telling Alan he needed to apologize for causing a scene. That family harmony was more important than a petty squabble. And Sarah, his wife, she was furious, but not at Alan. She was furious at Brian and at Alan's family for defending him. She told Alan that this wasn't just about the cake. It was about the years of boundary stomping, the passive-aggressive comments, the way Brian always made Alan the butt of the joke. She said that if Alan apologized, he would be proving them right, that their feelings didn't matter, that Leo's needs were secondary to Brian's ego. She stood by him, a rock in the storm. But Alan could see the toll it was taking on her, too. The stress, the sadness, the realization that the family they thought they had was fractured. Alan finished his scotch and signaled for another. He looked at me, his eyes searching for something. Understanding, maybe. Absolution. So, here I am. My sister isn't speaking to me. My parents are disappointed in me. And my son cried when I told him the cake was gone. He didn't understand why Uncle Brian would do that. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that some adults just don't care? Was I wrong, Mac? Was I the asshole? It was just a piece of cake. Maybe I should have let it go. Maybe I should have just apologized, kept the peace. But he trailed off, shaking his head. But if I let this go, where does it end? When does my son's safety become more important than my brother-in-law's feelings? When do I get to say enough is enough without being the bad guy? What do you say to that? It's a question as old as time. The conflict between the peacekeeper and the protector. The tension between family obligation and self-respect. He wasn't asking me if eating the cake was wrong. He knew it was. He was asking me if the price of standing up for his son was too high. And in this business, you learn that there are no easy answers, only choices and the consequences that come with them. Sometimes a slice of cake is just a slice of cake. And sometimes it's a declaration of war. So I'm handing the verdict over to you. Was Alan the asshole for blowing up over a piece of dessert and fracturing his family? Or was he justified in finally drawing a line in the sand against a lifetime of disrespect, even if it meant causing a scene? Pull up a stool, pour yourself something strong, and tell me what you would do.